What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking about UFC 298, where we have the great main event of Volkanovski versus Topuria. I personally think this is the best fight in the entire UFC. I cannot wait, and I'm also going to be breaking down some of the other fights on the main card as well. Let's get started out with the main event. This fight is so much fun. We got the featherweight champ, who has been the reigning champ for almost 1,500 days now, in Alexander Volkanovski. This guy is a fantastic striker. He's got some good wrestling and some very, very solid submission defense. We got Ilia Topuria, the guy who is a very powerful striker, very good boxing, has a great chin, and he also was a grappler when he started out in his career. He's got a Greco-Roman wrestling base, and he also is a BJJ black belt. Now, he loves his hands, and he goes with a striking heavy approach in a lot of his fights, but he can always take the fight down to the ground. Now, I don't think he's going to find much success on the ground because I don't know if he's going to be able to find the takedowns against Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski stuffed a lot of takedowns from Ilia Topuria, who is a much bigger opponent and a better wrestler than Ilia Topuria, but Ilia Topuria has some very slick submissions. Like I said, BJJ black belt. Now, we haven't seen Ilia Topuria much off of his back yet, which is in a very interesting scenario we may see in this fight, because I do think Volk can find the takedowns on Topuria, because we have seen Ilia Topuria taken down by Bryce Mitchell before. If I'm Alexander Volkanovski, I'm not going with the pure striking fight here. I think that's a bad game plan. I think you need to work in the takedowns, because a takedown threat will work in your favor. I think shooting a takedown, even if you don't hold him down, even if you don't find the submission TKO early, just shooting the takedown or even securing it will give you such a massive advantage on the feet. I think he can find the takedowns. I don't know if he's going to go for them. Honestly, I think he's going to see the power from Ilia Topuria. Ilia Topuria might threaten a couple of uppercuts where he's not throwing them, but he kind of feints them out there, similar to how we saw Mario Batista throw the knee against Ricky Simon. That's a very random example, but if you're keeping along with the UFC, you know what I'm talking about, where they kind of just feint that knee, they throw that shot that really threatens the takedown there. And I think Ilia Topuria might throw the uppercut a couple of times, not really throwing it completely, just to scare Volkanovski out of shooting the takedowns, out of shooting these entries, because Topuria can knock this guy out at any moment. What's so interesting and makes this matchup so close to predict is, in my opinion, Volk is the more technical striker. He's got great leg kicks, he's got good boxing, he's got a good chin, he's got some pretty solid power, and he's got a very, very solid pace that he sets that could be a big problem for Ilia Topuria. But the big but in this fight is Alexander Volkanovski just got head kick KO against Islam Makhachev, and that is a horrible sign going into this against one of the hardest hitters in the 145 division. I'd say he's probably the second hardest hitter, right behind Josh Emmett, but even then he presents more of a threat on the feet to Alexander Volkanovski, because he is more accurate and just a much more technical striker than a Josh Emmett. Ilia Topuria is better off the back foot than Josh Emmett. I don't know, I'm comparing him directly to Josh Emmett because Josh Emmett hasn't fought Alexander Volkanovski, and he is just miles ahead of Josh Emmett, but Ilia Topuria is good off the back foot. In that performance against Josh Emmett, he impressed me. He showed 5 rounds of cardio. I was not expecting that from Ilia Topuria, because he throws a lot of his shots with a lot of power and hadn't previously shown an ability to make it a very technical fight, which he did against Josh Emmett. And a lot of people will say, well, he didn't finish Josh Emmett, he must suck, and Yair Rodriguez finished Josh Emmett. Okay, fair enough. That is a decent point to bring up, but I do think that if Ilia Topuria really hunted for the finish after he dropped Josh Emmett a couple of those times, I do think he could have finished him, honestly. I felt like he dropped them and kind of was a little bit patient, didn't want to rush in, potentially get caught with the counter, or just overall expend his cardio and gas himself out in the later rounds, which is pretty good. It shows a pretty high fight IQ from Ilia Topuria. But like I was saying, he showed a good ability off the back foot with the massive, massive power threat from Josh Emmett. If you're not familiar with Josh Emmett, the dude knocked out Bryce Mitchell at UFC 296 and sent him into a seizure. The dude knocks out anyone he lands clean on. Does he land clean all that often, though? No. Josh Emmett, not the most technical striker. He just wings some fucking massive hooks. It doesn't look the greatest. He isn't the most technical striker, but nevertheless, Ilia Topuria, who hadn't shown great striking defense in the past, he got dropped by a head kick by Jai Herbert. He's got dropped by a head kick on the regional scene as well. He's gotten clipped with some decent shots throughout his career. Showed some massive improvements. He was rolling with the shots with Josh Emmett very well, was very aware of the power. He worked in some leg kicks, but his leg kicks aren't that good, and that's where I think Alexander Volkanovski can have a lot of success, is working in his leg kicks, working in the takedowns, and then having success on the feet. I think most of this fight will be on the feet, even if Volkanovski is landing the takedowns, because Ilia Topuria, when he was taken down by Bryce Mitchell, he slowly found his way back up to the feet and did stuff a majority of those takedowns. I think his takedown defense is pretty solid when I'm talking about Ilia Topuria here. I think Volk has a better takedown defense, but Ilia Topuria, I don't think is finding the takedowns in Volk, whereas Volk will find the takedowns on Ilia if he does shoot those takedowns, but he might not, because when he fought another submission specialist like Brian Ortega, he wasn't shooting takedowns, he was keeping it on the feet and having a lot of success on the feet. I do think Volk will shoot takedowns at some point, but I think Ilia will be able to scramble back up to the feet. I don't know if he'll be able to submit Volk just because Islam Makhachev is a very good submission artist. Maybe not on the levels of a Charles Oliveira or these other guys that we view at the top of the BJJ guys, but he's got some very solid submissions, a very solid threat on the ground with the TKO ability, and Volk was able to survive that. That's a much bigger guy. Now, Ilia has some great fucking power, and it does scare me, but I do think Volk's submission defense is very, very solid. I think Ilia will be able to scramble back up to the feet. And when it is on the feet, I do feel worried for Volk coming off a head kick KO loss. And not only that, it wasn't just, oh, it was an easy weight cut for Volk to lightweight. You heard Volk saying multiple times, yeah, this was a tough weight cut. He was coming off the couch. He was definitely not in the greatest shape of his life. If you look at his, I think it was post-weigh-in interviews, the dude was drained from his weight cut, 100%. That's the most drained I've seen his face in quite some time. I can guarantee you that was a tough weight cut for Volk. One of the more tough weight cuts more than likely. And now he's going to be doing another tough weight cut to the featherweight division after getting flatlined by Islam Makhachev. Not a good look, especially seeing how powerful and accurate Ilia Topuria is. And what I like about Ilia Topuria here, bro, is he mixes it up to the body. He can take a clean shot. The shot that he took against Jai Herbert, man. And I wanted to bring this up too. An ironic fact is both of these guys seem to have the kryptonite of head kicks. Yair Rodriguez almost landed some clean head kicks on Alexander Volkanovski. There was some close encounters. Max Holloway dropped Alexander Volkanovski with the head kick, and he just got knocked out by Islam Makhachev with the head kick. Ilia Topuria got dropped by a head kick by Jai Herbert, and on the regional scene, he got dropped by a head kick as well. So that's just something very interesting to bring up. Alexander Volkanovski's got a great chin. I think Ilia Topuria has the ability to win this by decision if he finds the bigger shots. I think Volk is going to have to respect the power of Ilia Topuria massively, especially if Ilia Topuria is going out there showing the uppercut. He's feinting, and not even he has to throw it a lot. If he's just feinting it a couple of times, showing Alexander Volkanovski that he's looking for it on the entry, because that could really just threaten Alexander Volkanovski, have him worried too much about shooting in on takedowns. Almost how like Sean O'Malley was kind of showing that knee a little bit against Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling seemed a little bit hesitant to shoot in on him. There's other examples, like I mentioned, Mario Batista versus Ricky Simone. Mario Batista was doing that very well. I think the uppercut, just showing it, could be a massive tool from Ilia Topuria. What I like from Ilia Topuria as well is he had a lot of time to prepare for this fight. This fight was originally booked for UFC 297. Ilia was preparing. It feels like he's doing nothing but preparing for Alexander Volkanovski. Now Volkanovski's coming off a KO loss. Ilia Topuria is entering into his prime. He's only 26 years old. That is crazy to me. I think he'll be 27 around the time the fight takes place. I could be wrong. The fight's taking place like February 15th. Don't quote me on that. Somewhere around that time. No, maybe like February 22nd. I think that's right. Anyways, very excited. Anaheim, Honda Center, that's where it'll be. Not that that matters whatsoever. I'm just bringing that up. Look, I think Volk will probably find a couple of takedowns. Ilia will get back up to the feet, and it will be a primarily striking fight where Volk can have success on the feet. I want this to be his main game plan if he's going to win this fight, is working the leg kicks, especially early. Ilia Topuria's stance is a boxing type of stance. Volk can absolutely chew that leg up nonstop. Ilia has not been tested by a guy that's going to rip the calf. Josh Emmett was not that guy. Josh Emmett's the guy that's going to swing fucking powerful hooks, and they're going to swing wide, and if you can defend them, good on you. Ilia wasn't really caught clean. There were moments where when Ilia was getting a little bit too aggressive, I was getting a little bit scared, but I do think Ilia can trade in the pocket with Alexander Volkanovski. If you can trade in the pocket with Josh Emmett for times, I think he can do it against Volkanovski. Volkanovski's probably not as powerful, but Volkanovski is going to push a very big pace against Topuria, and it's going to be interesting to see Topuria off the back for the most part when Volkanovski's ripping up his leg. How is that Topuria going to hang up? Another point that I do want to mention is that Volkanovski got dropped by Chad Mendes, a guy who gave him a takedown threat. I do think Ilia is going to shoot in on a takedown. I don't know if he'll get it, but he'll impose, what is it called? He'll impose a takedown threat, which could potentially set up his hands. Chad Mendes had a takedown threat and landed a big shot on Alexander Volkanovski in round 2, dropped him at a moment. Now, Alexander Volkanovski did his traditional where he gets knocked down to one knee, gets back up, and then he's good, and then he recovers. My thing is, with Ilia Topuria, you might not want to do that, because if you get dropped, there could be bigger shots coming on the way. Maybe Ilia Topuria did what he did against Josh Emmett, where he kind of slows himself down, plays it patient and just secures the round. I could see him doing that. I could see him winning this by decision. I think a lot of people are saying, well, Ilia Topuria early, man, or Alexander Volkanovski decision or late KO. Ilia's got no chance later, man. I know Alexander Volkanovski sets a great pace, but don't rule it out that Alexander Volkanovski is going to be quadrupling him on strikes, and then Ilia Topuria lands a flush uppercut, rips to the body a couple times, drops Volk, and wins the round. I honestly could see that happening. I could see Ilia Topuria potentially landing some takedowns and some weird striking exchanges. I do think Volk will stuff a majority of the takedowns. I think he'll find some takedowns of his own. It's going to be, I might pick Ilia Topuria by decision. I'm not saying my official pick because I don't want to jinx it. That'll come out on fight week. I want to watch a little bit more film. This is just my early breakdown, not super in depth. I wanted to bring up some points, but oh my gosh, I'm excited for this one. Ilia's got quick hands. He's good at pressuring as well. I do think that the leg kicks can be a massive, massive problem for him. The takedowns could be a massive problem for him. And just overall, Volkanovski's ability to keep it a very technical fight. Volkanovski's got a very, very big reach, but I do like that Ilia Topuria has a very similar frame to Chad Mendes, has great power like Chad Mendes, and a potential takedown threat there as well, like Chad Mendes. Now, Volkanovski is much better than he was than when he fought Chad Mendes, but the fact that Volkanovski is getting up there in age is going to be doing another rough weight cut after getting knocked out flush at 155 by Islam Makhachev. Maybe it wasn't the worst flatline in the world. I understand technically it was a TKO, but for a moment when Islam Makhachev had Volkanovski's head up against his knee, he clearly went out cold, and that's just a bad look. And he's already saying that he's going to do his head in his post-fight interviews, which is not a very good look. He might not be in the mental best state. And when you're a guy like Alexander Volkanovski that is confident enough to take that fight against Islam Makhachev on short notice, and then you get flatline, it probably makes him feel really dumb. And he might be feeling a lot of doubts in his own head right now. And now going into this fight, there's going to be a lot of people picking Ilia Topuria saying, was that the biggest mistake Volkanovski has ever made? He's going to be met with the question multiple times throughout fight week. You can guarantee this on, do you regret it with Islam Makhachev? And do you feel like you're turning around too early? How do you feel about that? And he's going to say this, but behind the scenes, I can guarantee you he will have some doubts about taking this on short notice because he knows about the power that an Ilia Topuria holds because he watches the tape on Ilia Topuria. And man, I love Ilia Topuria, and man, I love Alexander Volkanovski. It feels like whenever there's a great fight, it's two fighters that I love a lot. With that being said, may the best man win. I do think Ilia Topuria can get it done. I don't think he finds it by submission. I think Ilia Topuria can find a KO in the first couple of rounds, maybe rounds 3, 4, or even a decision. I think he can land the more damaging shots, potentially win it by decision. Because when you look at Alexander Volkanovski's career, we saw this in the Holloway fight, even a little bit in the TKZ fight. I know a lot of people won't like me bringing up that fight because that was a great performance from Volk, but there were moments where if TKZ slightly adjusts his technique, he could land a little bit cleaner and bring some problems against an Alexander Volkanovski. There was a decent amount of people thinking that TKZ had a decent chance or say, hey, don't rule him out, man. He's got the one puncher's chance and whatnot. But I was very high on Volkanovski in that matchup. This is one of those where I look at a guy like Ilia Topuria and I know that he is much, potentially more powerful, has much better footwork than TKZ. He'll rip to the body a lot better than TKZ, and he is much more accurate. He's more patient. I like the patience that I saw from him against Josh Emmett. And I know against Bryce Mitchell, he didn't look that technical, and he was winging some wide hooks, looking like Josh Emmett out there. And I hated that performance, but I do think against Josh Emmett, he showed a new part to his game where we learned he has good 5-round cardio. He's got good ability off the back foot, good ability to stay away from the power from Josh Emmett, good ability to roll with punches. My question is, how is his leg kick defense? And how is his takedown defense? Bryce Mitchell kind of chain takedowns together a little bit better than Alexander Volkanovski may. Alexander Volkanovski might just go with the traditional double leg, and if Ilia stuffs that, he might give up. But if he chains takedowns together, that's where I think he can put Ilia Topuria in some trouble, because there was a couple of times where Bryce Mitchell was adjusting his hips, and that's when he would find the takedowns and put Ilia Topuria in a pretty rough position. So that's going to be interesting to see. It really is. So excited for this matchup. I'm going to move on to the co-main event. I think I covered what I meant to cover. I probably missed out on something. If there's something that I'm not mentioning that you want to bring up, a prediction that you have, feel free to leave in the comments down below. I'd love to start a discussion on this fight because it is so much fun. Less than 3 weeks away at this point, I do believe, and I want to know what the community's thinking here. Moving on to the co-main event, it's Paulo Costa versus Robert Whitaker for now. I think it may end up being Henry Cejudo versus Merab Dvalishvili. No official word on that, but on the UFC 297 broadcast, they had Paulo Costa versus Robert Whitaker listed as the co-main event. I'm going to go with Robert Whitaker. If it's 5 rounds, I'm more confident in it. If it's 3 rounds, I am a little bit nervous. But ultimately, look, he lost to Dricus du Plessis. And I do think Dricus du Plessis had something that made it very tough for Robert Whitaker, which was his ability to switch stances. Another piece of evidence that I can bring up that really gave Robert Whitaker some issues, which is Adesanya switches stances sometimes, but I was going to bring up the cannoneer jab that he landed in round 3. I was rewatching this for Strickland versus Duplessis when I was doing my research, and I saw this one exact jab that Dricus Duplessis landed on Robert Whitaker and dropped him and eventually finished the fight with was the same jab that Jared Cannonier rocked, what's his fucking name? Robert Whitaker in round 3. Wasn't able to find the finish, but it's just interesting to note that as soon as Jared Cannonier switched into the southpaw stance and landed a southpaw jab, Robert Whitaker got clipped clean and he was rocked. Dricus Duplessis was switching his stance multiple times throughout that fight. Now he didn't switch his stance as, quickly upon throwing the strike as Jared Cannonier did, but he was switching stances multiple times throughout that fight and rocked him and dropped Robert Whitaker with a southpaw jab. And now Dricus Duplessis has gone on to become the UFC middleweight champion. Very close fight. Round 2 was very close, regardless of who you think won. I think you can admit it was a very, very close fight, and Dricus Duplessis is one of the best middleweights on earth, no doubt about it, and that's who Robert Whitaker lost to. And I think Dricus Duplessis had a takedown threat that I don't see Paulo Costa really going for here. Honestly, I don't. Did he take down? Maybe it was Luke Rockhold that took down Paulo Costa, but I do think Paulo Costa landed a couple of takedowns on Luke Rockhold, but I'll say this much. Against Marvin Vettori and against Luke Rockhold, those are Paulo Costa's 2 most recent performances. I didn't like the way that his striking looked all that much. I know he's aesthetically pleasing. He's a good-looking dude, man. But he's a good-looking dude, very strong, and you think he'd be super powerful. But the problem is he's got T-Rex arms, which is going to benefit Robert Whitaker massively. He gets clipped a lot, and I think Robert Whitaker's jab will be money. Robert Whitaker's striking defense is not that bad. His chin is a little bit questionable, but I will say that Paulo Costa has only really knocked out bums. He doesn't have any great wins to his record outside of really Yoel Romero, and I would argue that he potentially lost that fight. That was a very controversial decision. Paulo Costa is fun. I think he's a very cool dude. I don't want to underestimate him because he is physically imposing and he will put the pressure on Robert Whitaker like Dricus Duplessis did. I just don't like the fact that, he's not going to switch stances the same way that Dricus Duplessis did. I doubt he's going to shoot takedowns and potentially impose a threat on the ground the same way that Dricus Duplessis did at the end of round 1. And not only that, dude, I'm sorry, bro. You should not be getting outstruck by Marvin Vettori. It was a close decision. I know there was a couple of weird point deductions. Some people thought Paulo Costa won. Anyways, Marvin Vettori should not be landing the shots that he landed on you. Marvin Vettori is not a good striker. This needs to be said. Look what Robert Whitaker did to Marvin Vettori in 3 rounds, and look what Paulo Costa did to Marvin Vettori. He went life or death with Marvin Vettori. And I know I'm not going to fault him too much for not being able to finish the Iron Chin Marvin Vettori. I can get that, but you should be finishing Luke Rockhold if I'm going to trust you to finish Robert Whitaker, who is good defensively. Luke Rockhold's not very good defensively and does not have the greatest chin. And that was Luke Rockhold off of a pretty long layoff. I know it wasn't Salt Lake City. Fair enough. And I do think this will probably end up being 3 rounds somehow. I wish it would be 5 because it's a co-main event. 5-round fights are more interesting in my opinion. We have seen Paulo Costa go 5 rounds. A very high output against Marvin Vettori. That was a lot of fun to watch. Make this 5 rounds. If it's a co-main event, do it. But Paulo Costa has fought in a 3-round co-main event. I don't know the exact number of it, but it was the same UFC pay-per-view that Leon Edwards knocked out Kamaru Usman. I'll say this much. I watched Marvin Vettori go up there and strike with Roman Dolidze, and I'm laughing that this is the top of the middleweight division. I know it's not the top of the top. You got Robert Whitaker, Dricus Duplessis, Sean Strickland, Alex Pereira, Izzy Adesanya. I know Alex Pereira is at the light heavyweight division now, but I was laughing. I was saying, bro, this is a top 10 matchup in the middleweight division right now, and I'm watching this unfold in my eyes. This is happening. And Paulo Costa had a close striking match with Marvin Vettori, and not only that, you could say, well, Marvin Vettori landed some takedowns. Cool. I think if Marvin Vettori's landing takedowns on Paulo Costa, Robert Whitaker will be able to as well. Robert Whitaker got down Dricus Duplessis. He's landed some other takedowns throughout his past. I got to go with Robert Whitaker here. In a 5-rounder, I'm going to give him like a 70% chance. And in a 3-rounder, I'll give him like a 60% chance. Like, I'm not going to underrate Robert Whitaker too much. I don't think Paulo Costa's power is as devastating as his physique might indicate. Interesting matchup. Robert Whitaker, I'm going to say 30-27 decision. I think the jab is going to be money. I think he's going to be moving a lot. Robert Whitaker was saying he was injured going into the Dricus Duplessis fight. Whether or not I buy that, I don't think that Robert Whitaker is going to have as much of a tough time with Paulo Costa, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just the physically imposing guys Robert Whitaker has a massive problem with. But even then, he had success against Yoel Romero. and was dropped multiple times and was able to recover. So that's interesting to note. I don't think his chin is complete dog shit. It's not on the level of Beneil Dariush, Dominic Ray, some of these guys that, just a regular jab will knock him out, right? And his striking defense is better than those guys as well. So I think Robert Whitaker gets this one done. I'm excited for this fight, though. I really hope Paulo Costa shows up. I'm not hating on him too much. I guess I kind of am a little bit, but I do like the guy. He's a lot of fun. If he wins, I wouldn't mind it. I think the winner of this probably takes on Sean Strickland. Maybe a title elimination bout. If Robert Whitaker wins, maybe it's not a title elimination bout if Dricus du Plessis loses to Israel Adesanya. I think that's probably the matchup they're going to go for. Knowing the UFC, it's going to be Izzy versus DDP as the main event of UFC 300. And if Izzy wins that, I don't think they're going to give Robert Whitaker another title shot. But I'm leaning towards Dricus du Plessis in that matchup right now. I think he can find the takedowns. And although when it comes to the striking, it is kind of rough to really want to be on the DDP side, because the problem that Izzy had with Sean Strickland was Sean Strickland's ability to just deflect all the counters. Strickland's defense was so good in that fight, Izzy couldn't get going. Dricus du Plessis is hittable. Sean Strickland was hitting him. The counters were there, and Izzy is primarily a counter striker. I wonder how Dricus du Plessis is going to do with such a great leg kicker in Israel Adesanya. Now, Dricus can land the big shot on the feet. I do think Dricus can find the takedowns. I mean, Izzy's been taken down by Marvin Vettori, and there's another fight I'm forgetting to mention right now as well. But Izzy has been taken down multiple times. If Marvin Vettori is getting your back and putting you in a bad position, I think Dricus du Plessis can potentially find that submission, maybe find a TKO, or even beat you by decision while working in the takedowns a little bit more heavily than he did against Sean Strickland. And I don't think Izzy is going to be able to get back up as well as Sean Strickland did. And maybe he gets hit with the clean shot. I think on the feet, Izzy will have success with the leg kicks. He'll find some nice counter shots, but Dricus will work in some takedowns, potentially find some big shots, maybe find a finish. I'm going to pick Dricus du Plessis as of now. I'm going to rewatch film, but I'm not sure that Israel Adesanya is at the prime of his career anymore. And even if he is, I'm not sure that he will be able to beat Dricus du Plessis. So that's a short breakdown on that. But I think DDP versus Izzy, DDP wins. And then the next title elimination bout, I would love to see Hamzat versus Izzy. It's just probably not going to happen. I'm getting all the vibe right now. I think they want to have Izzy and Hamzat fight for the title separately. They are two very massive names, and they don't want one spoiling the other. So I think it's Izzy versus DDP, and then it'll be Hamzat eventually versus Cannonier, and then Sean Strickland versus the winner of Costa versus Whitaker, which I think will be Whitaker. And they'll figure it all out, probably something like that. I might match make it a little bit different, but the UFC does what the UFC wants. Sean versus DDP2 makes a lot of sense because of how close the fight was. And Sean has shown a lot of willingness to run that one back, but I doubt it will end up happening. So yeah, let's move on to the other fights on the card. Let's do Merab versus Henry Cejudo. It's probably going to be 3 rounds. It could be 5 rounds. If it's 5 rounds, I'm more confident on the Merab side. But even if 3 rounds, I'm going with Merab. And I do think Henry has a very good chance. I think a lot of people, when it comes to fight week, will be super high on Merab and say, well, Merab went out there and cooked Petr Yan and this and that and whatnot. But Henry Cejudo is a very high IQ fighter. He's got very solid takedown defense. And if he's put in the same positions that Jose Aldo was put in, he's going to be working in the knees to the clinch. He knows how Merab fights, and he's not just going to accept Murat nut-hugging him the whole time and hoping to win decision by, kneeing into the upper thigh of Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo is going to be doing work in the clinch, and that's why I really don't mind Henry Cejudo in 3 rounds. If Merab goes anywhere north of a minus 250 favorite, I don't mind the bet of Henry Cejudo by decision. I don't think he's finding the knockout. Look, Merab has a very solid chin. He's got some very solid chin recovery, but ultimately I do think that Merab style is annoying for anybody. I think Merab probably is improving at this point in his career. And Henry Cejudo was taken down by Aljamain Sterling, and in my opinion, didn't look that great against Aljamain Sterling. I'm just going to have to go with Merab here. I mean, Henry Cejudo hasn't fought a decent amount of time, right? Like, since he fought Aljamain Sterling has gotten knocked out by Sean O'Malley and had enough time to potentially bulk up and book a fight against Calvin Kattar at UFC 300. But ultimately, like I'm saying, if Henry Cejudo stuffs the takedowns, he'll be more busy in the clinch than Jose Aldo was. But I do think Merab is going to be shooting like a madman. And I'm not going to be picking against Merab until I see him, potentially show some more flaws in his game. But in 3 rounds, hey, I think Merab should be pushing for 5 rounds very, very heavily here, because if that's the case, this goes from like a 52 to 55% chance that I'm giving Merab the win to like a 65 to 70%. I'll say like a 70% chance that Merab beats Henry in a 5-rounder, just because in 5 rounds, bro, this guy is going to be damn near unbeatable with the pace that he pushes. Honestly. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this gets him a title shot. That's what's interesting, too, is you got Sanhagen that I can tell the UFC is trying to give the next title shot after Marlon Vera. or they're going to do Sandhagen versus Umar Nurmagomedov. But the fact that UFC Saudi Arabia was pushed back tells me that Sandhagen's probably got the next title shot wrapped up somehow. And maybe they give a Merab title shot after Corey Sandhagen fights Sean O'Malley. So maybe Merab by the end of the year will fight for the belt. And then from there, I do think Merab beats him. In a 5-rounder, I don't know who I'm picking against Merab. Maybe Song Yadong. For now, like, I'm just going to be on the Merab train. I'm not going to pick against him. That Petr Yan performance was wild. He shot damn near 50 takedowns, if not 40 or 50 takedowns. I think it was like 45, 49, something crazy like that. His cardio is genuinely the biggest cheat code to humanity because he is not the most skilled fighter in the division, but he will potentially become champ, and I do think will become champ by the end of the year if he gets through Henry Cejudo. But in 3 rounds, man, this is probably going to be the most dangerous matchup for Merab. Outside of maybe Sean O'Malley, but even then, I mean, I don't think Sean O'Malley's takedown defense was really proven. I don't even think that Sean O'Malley needs to get taken down to lose the fight. And I think Merab can just hold him there. That's just how Merab is, man. It is what it is. He's not exciting, but he'll push a good pace, and he has the cardio to beat anybody. So early lean is Merab. In 3 rounds, I'm not confident. Like I've said, probably 4 or 5 times so far. Let's move on to Ian Garry versus Jeff Neal. I'm going with Ian Garry. Against Wonderboy Thompson, Jeff Neal had problems. I think Ian Garry has a similar style. Not the exact same. I know Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is very unique with his kicks, but we're talking about a striker that's very light on the feet, very quick in and out, nice jab, nice rangy punches, and some nice leg kicks. I think Ian Garry is going to work in the leg kicks a lot, work in the jab a lot, stay at range, poke, and move. That's what it's going to be. And I think he's going to land a lot of leg kicks. Jeff Neal's going to be going out there swinging a lot of heavy hooks, not going to be able to find the target. And I do believe that he can knock out Ian Garry because he is a pretty high-level striker. But ultimately, what I saw against Wonderboy Thompson is a guy that struggled with the range, struggled with the speed. Ian Garry's going to be quicker. I think he knows of the power threat from Jeff Neal. I'm cheering for Jeff Neal. I do not like Ian Garry. He's a weird guy. I don't like what he did against Neil Magny. That whole thing where he printed out the mugshot of Jeff Neal was just corny. I mean, everyone's a little bit corny, but like there's something about the guy that not a lot of people like. I think a lot of people within the MMA community do not like Ian Garry. What I can say, if he wins this fight, it's good for the UFC, and I'm looking forward to Ian Garry fight week just for the reason of I hate him. So I can't appreciate the fact that he's making me excited for his fights, but I'm not excited to see him beat Jeff Neal if that's ending up what it's going to be. I don't think he finds a KO. Jeff Neal has a pretty solid chin. He took some clean shots from Shavkat Rakhmonov. Ian Garry, I don't think has the greatest chin. He got dropped by Kenan Song. Brendan Allen mentioned that somewhere in the Kill Clef MMA practice that Ian Garry was knocked out at some point in sparring. I personally think it was Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I'm just kind of grasping at straws at that point because I do remember that there was someone that trained at the gym. I think it was like a coach or maybe an actual fighter there that trained there that said that Shavkat and Ian Garry's matchup was something that he wishes he could tell the world how it went. So I put the two together, and I do think that Shavkat potentially knocked out Ian Garry in sparring. That's not an official source. That's just me grasping at straws. But I do know through Brendan Allen that Ian Garry has been knocked out in sparring. And that's kind of just going a little bit further with my agenda that Ian Garry does not have the greatest chin. And the reason why I'm pushing that agenda is because if you see the way that his head is shaped and see the way that his neck is shaped, he looks like a guy that's going to get chinned pretty badly at some point in his career, if not multiple times. He just doesn't look like he can take a very good shot. And he got turned off by Kenan Song. I'll tell you that much. But Ian Garry is going to rip the legs. He's going to work the jab. He's going to be moving nonstop. He's going to beat him by a 30-27 unanimous decision. I think he survives it all. I don't think Jeff Neal's shooting it on takedowns, like I said. Interesting fight. Jeff Neal, I'm cheering for you, brother, but you really got to just beware of the speed of Ian Garry and find a way to close the distance, which I'm not sure you can do, especially after rewatching that Wonderboy Thompson fight. And I know that was a long time ago, but I think Ian Garry has the tools to beat you. Moving on to Anthony Hernandez versus Roman Kopylov. This was originally supposed to be Ikram Aliskerov versus Anthony Hernandez, but Ikram Aliskerov pulled out due to staph a whole month before the fight, which is kind of annoying to see because potentially he could have recovered, but I do understand, that is probably during the prime parts of his training camp and he wants to be 100% okay by the time he's fighting Anthony Hernandez. I get it. It's cool. I'm not going to fault him too much for it, but that was a matchup I was very interested in, but this is just as good. Ikram was like a multiple-time Sambo champion, but so is Roman Kopylov. I believe Roman Kopylov is a 5-time Sambo champion. Very, very fun striker to watch. He showed some solid takedown defense recently against Josh Fremd, but he has been taken down in the past by Albert Duraev, and I do think he's been submitted. It was either by Albert Duraev or the other fighter that he lost to in his first 2 losses. But ultimately, Roman Kopylov's record in the UFC is 4-2. He lost his first 2 fights and then came back and won the last 4 all by knockout against Punahele Soriano, Josh Fremd, Alessio De Chirico, and Cladson Ribeiro. I think he is the quickest kicks in the entire middleweight division. Pound for pound, he's probably the quickest kicker. Very powerful kicks. He's a fun southpaw to watch. He gets hit at times, but he lands some big shots as well. Nice knockout power. I think that this may be a very hard matchup for him, though, and I'm leaning towards Anthony Hernandez just because Anthony Hernandez has the type of style that is hard for anybody because he pushes an insane pace, shoots non-stop takedowns, has good submissions, has some power in his hands, so there is a threat on the feet. I think Roman Kopylov is the better striker, and if he stuffs all the takedowns, he probably will win this fight. But I don't know if he will be able to because Anthony Hernandez will chain together takedowns, is going to look for submissions on the ground, and he will not stop going. He has his last 2 fights finishing in the 3rd round against Edmund Shabazian and Marc-Andre Barriault, and then against Rodolfo Vieira. He pushed an insane pace and made Rodolfo Vieira gas out. Now, Vieira doesn't have the greatest gas tank, and he found the submission in round 2, but he pushes an insane pace. And by the time this hits round 3, even if Roman Kopylov is having success, I don't know if I'm going to be able to trust him to go out there and stuff the takedowns and do what needs to be done to survive round 3. I think maybe he finds the takedowns, finds the submission in round 3. I'm going to ride the Anthony Hernandez round 3 train. As of now, I'm leaning towards Anthony Hernandez, and I'm going to say round 3 submission. That's the early lean, but please don't overly criticize me right now. I need to go back or rewatch some Roman Kopylov film because I'm not super familiar with his recent performances. No, not his recent performances, but his early performance against Albert Duraev and the other fighter that I can't name right now. I need to rewatch the Josh Fremd fight where Josh Fremd shot in on multiple takedowns and he stuffed them all. I remember thinking that there was a couple of times where I was a little bit suspect on it, but ultimately, Josh Fremd is not that good of an offensive wrestler. Anthony Hernandez kind of had a lot of success, took him down, had a very strong round 3, I think. Maybe it was a 29-28 decision. Maybe it was 30-27. But ultimately, Anthony Hernandez has looked pretty solid against Marc-Andre Barriault and Edmund Shabazian since. I think he's going to find the takedowns, chain together submissions. When maybe one of the first couple of rounds, Roman Kopylov will do enough damage on one of the rounds but get taken down a couple of times. So it'll be like 1-1 going into the 3rd, and then Roman Kopylov might start to slow down. And that's where Anthony Hernandez will have some success. When I watched Roman Kopylov, I believe it was against Alessio De Chirico, it looked like he kind of slowed down a little bit in the 2nd round. So that's what makes me a little bit nervous about this matchup, is if he's slowing down whatsoever at all against Anthony Hernandez can weaponize his cardio and then put the fight down to the ground. And once it's on the ground, he has the slicker and the better jiu-jitsu. Now, maybe Roman Kopylov's submission defense has massively improved since his early days in the UFC, but ultimately I'm going to be betting on Anthony Hernandez and his experience so far in the UFC. I do want to rewatch some Roman Kopylov tape, and I do want to see if I can watch some of his Sambo fights as well, because Sambo is a very great base in the UFC, and a lot of people are underestimating how fun it can be to watch. Like, dude, Roman Kopylov, so much fun to watch. Ikram Aliskerov, even fun to watch, because a lot of these guys that are really good in the Sambo background, they are finding finishes, and finishes are fun to watch. Not only that, they're very high-level grapplers, and they're a lot of fun to watch. Ikram Aliskerov, Islam Makhachev, Roman Kopylov, Shavkat Rakhmonov, there's a couple others. Like, a lot of them are fun to watch. Now, I know there are a couple of Dagestani guys that aren't the most fun to watch, but I think it's gotten a very bad rep within the community with how boring it is to watch. I'm so excited for this fight. I think the winner of this is going to prove himself as one of the better prospects in the division. If Roman Kopylov wins this fight, I'll be tooting his horn. And likewise, if Anthony Hernandez wins this fight, if he finds the takedowns against Roman Kopylov, who has shown solid takedown defense recently, props to him. With that being said, that's going to conclude this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If there's anything you feel like I missed out or any reasons that I should have mentioned here, feel free to leave it down in the comments down below. With that being said, make sure to have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.